At Wellness, we know Helayne as our Chief Creative Officer. Those of you who are meeting Helayne for the first time or are in for a show, Helayne has a famous career, having been a creative director at Hal Riney, New York, Ammirati and Puris, Y&R, J. Walter Thompson, and then here. And what happened to her foot, I know that you guys are all going to be asking, that comes from repeatedly kicking me under the table. So after a period of time, that's the end result. So we're delighted to have you here and to start this off, and I will turn this over to Sharon. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a great morning. Well, Helayne, it's such an honor to be interviewing you today.
Thank you.
So we know that technology is very rapidly changing our world, and I think health and wellness is no exception. I'd love to hear, especially because you're on the creative front lines, some of the very innovative and inspiring examples you're seeing in your day-to-day.
It's just a different, everybody says this, it's a whole different world out there, but it truly is a whole different world out there, and it gets more and more different every single day. What we're able to do and the kind of categories that we're able to become a part of they didn't exist a few years ago. And I think if we kind of put them into categories, what's truly amazing are some of the things we're able to do for ourselves. It used to be there's an expression, physician heal thyself, and now it's patient heal thyself. It's pretty amazing what we can find out and discover about ourselves, how we're more in charge of our information. It's no longer, I don't know if we all remember when we were children, we all used to be threatened that whatever we did wrong was going to go on their permanent record card. Those permanent record cards are lost forever because they weren't permanent, and God knows where they can find them. But these days we have permanent record cards, and it's every bit of our health information. And we're more and more in charge of it these days. So amazing things are happening in that front, just on the information we have alone.
Absolutely. So what are some of the most creative campaigns that you've seen?
There are a lot of creative campaigns, but I think some of the ones that affect us day to day are truly amazing, and I have to go back again in the diagnostic space. I wish I had the visual for this, although maybe it's a little too early to show the visual for this. But in Poland, they wanted to show, it was for breast cancer and how to examine yourself. Now you would imagine that would be on a site for women, and there would be some information, and you'd learn how to correctly examine your breast. Except what they did in Poland was they went on an adult site where they found where men would be. They took one of the characters or one of the women that are usually on this adult site, and they put in this very nicely built young woman who I think went by the handle of Magic Boobs. And what you were supposed to do, and the sign I believe said, if you're going to play this way. And with your cursor, it actually showed the men who participated in this the proper way to examine a woman's breast. 175,000 men, this site was up for 1 week, participated, which is fairly amazing, and they actually learned the proper way to examine so they could actually help the woman they were with. So there are very different ways of getting into somebody's mind and making things better with the world. You just have to have a lot of imagination. That was not a media buy I might have made first thing off the top of my head.
I can only imagine what those numbers would be in the U.S. They might be every minute.
Pretty much. They would be healthy breasts all over, in the subway, on the bus, yeah.
That's fantastic. Are there other areas where you're seeing, similar moves to, I wouldn't maybe call that create value, but, add value to people's lives?
Everybody is trying to do something. What's very interesting, and someone said this to me recently, and I just think it's one of the most, the biggest difference from what we used to call the information age. The information age has turned into the knowledge age. All of that vast data that was flowing at us, we now have better ways of realizing what that means. again, about having your own personal records, you finally understand what that means. My blood pressure, I understand what that, people know what their cholesterol levels are. People are understanding more and more, which doctors never liked DTC advertising. They just thought, it's my job to tell my patient and who are they to come in, and I've studied and I do this. Well, we all know doctors have, I don't know, what is it on the average, maybe 5 minutes to see us? A lot of us don't have this problem, but it depends on how much you can pay for health care. Not every doctor is willing to sit there and listen, but if you can go into a doctor knowing that you have a blood pressure issue, knowing that you have an issue with cholesterol, knowing that you have an obesity problem, it's a lot easier than sitting, not talking, and wasting whatever time you do spend with your doctor. So we're better armed.
Yeah, and I think that plays into a larger trend. So, we've come from a place where we've been updating and posting in a lot of ways to Twitter and the like, and there's a lot of information out there. And I think now we're looking to own that information. What does the data mean? And I think that plays into health and wellness in a lot of ways. So right now we're seeing this huge trend of connected fitness. And I see companies like Fitbit, for example, really trying to take advantage and provide users with that data to do something with it.
For example, there's Fitbit, but what Bloomberg did throughout the Bloomberg organization is, on a very basic level, he gave out pedometers. And he wanted everybody to use them. He wanted everybody to walk. You know what he's done for New York. We don't smoke, and our salt levels have gone down. And
don't drink soda either.
Don't drink soda, but that was a quiet one. I know what he's gonna be on next, but fortunately that doesn't affect me. Anyway, what he did was by making walking and health a corporate issue, he had everybody talking about it. It became a very healthy competition, where at the end of the competition, not only did each individual person do better, but so did the organization. Less sickness, less outs. So it was a very selfish giving thing to do. There's something called, I was looking at the other night, called KIAS, and it's done through insurance companies, and it also goes for every facet of your life. How could you make your relationships better? How can you make your financial better? How can you make and it's all done by healthy competition. We do better when, there was a statistic I wanted to point out, and here it is, people are 166% more likely to change behavior when you're reinforced with other people online and doing online health. So it doesn't matter if you know someone, just being against and pitted against someone and knowing that there's a standard and a context, it's a very healthy, literally healthy competition.
Well, I think that's really interesting because it plays into the larger trend of gamification. Everything becomes a game. If I'm on, for example, my new Nike Fuel band, I'm competing with other people who are athletic. I want to see myself motivated by competition, and I think that's fantastic.
They've also done something wonderful because children with diabetes, imagine it's bad enough when you're an adult, but when you're a child to have to stick yourself and to have to track yourself, it's, parents are like, did you, and they have to keep track. Well, I think it's Nintendo that has, you attach your meter to one of the Nintendo, I think it's Nintendo Lite or, one of those Nintendo stations. You test yourself and it puts you in a competition. And there are online points. It's not a rewards game from outside, but it becomes something that encourages kids to test. And that's where gaming is also a very, very healthy thing, to do what maybe parents can't. And something as scary as sticking yourself, that's what all gaming does. It kind of puts, no matter how serious the disease state, it puts it in a context where you feel better about it, and you're in a more open mindset to get better by playing.
Absolutely. So, what are some other trends you're seeing in the space? We've hit on gamification. We've hit on data and owning data. What else?
There's some really there's this interesting thing that they did in Canada, and it was at bus stops. And what they had was, what a bus kiosk is, so you can get pretty much a full body in there. And what they wanted to do, it was to get people to realize that if they went into the healthcare field, they'll actually be doing something that can affect a life. So what they had was a picture of somebody under a cover. There were two places to place hands on this patient, this patient's chest. It looks like a billboard. But you hear kind of a flat line, and you're encouraged to go up, put both hands on this billboard, which suddenly kicks it into action, and you're seeing that you've actually, by touching with your own hand, brought somebody back to life. And then it sends you somewhere to interest you in a career in healthcare. So people are looking for ways to turn what used to be literally a flat experience to send you somewhere, to make you feel something and have an experience, to make it easier to go.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So where do you see the future of some of these campaigns? Where do you see the future of some of these trends?
There was an incredible example, talking about 360. In Japan, the work ethic that brought them so far into recent modern times also formed, and I don't know the Japanese word for it. If somebody does, they raise their hand and let me know. But it's the phenomenon of perfectly healthy men in their 40s, 30s, 40s, from the stress that they have every day, from the smoking that they're doing, from the brown goods that they're drinking. It's like New York, the United States in the 1950s. They drop dead. They literally don't take care of this. They literally, a man leaves the house, drops dead at work. They had to make these people aware of what their blood pressure was and what the danger was. So how do you take a man who's in his 40s, and this is not just a Japanese trait, how do you take any man in his 40s at the top of his game and kind of convince him that he's vulnerable and he has to do something and he should act now? So instead of making it into something that's against their manhood, it became a challenge called Roll Up Your Sleeves, Japan. It's been going on for a couple of years, and what they did this year, they had I believe it was a soccer player, and he went through the streets, signed up teams, then you could go online and select your team. The goal was 130 over 85, and you could put in your information and track it. It was not only online, it was on television, there were billboards, and when the day came for the big kind of like pump-in, this athlete checked his blood pressure, and on a side of a building, there were two very good athletes suspended by wires, and they represented on that tick meter a blood pressure, where the blood pressure was, and these guys were hanging there all day long. The city was, just concentrated around that. It became something that went all throughout the city. So, how could people not want to become part of it, because it was an amazing experience. So just something like that, just to get people aware without making them feel that their mother is telling them, to put on your coat, it's cold outside.
Yeah. So much of what you're talking about is awareness and empowering, these individuals to better understand, things that are happening in their lives, especially with their own wellness. Mm-hmm. How does that change the role of the doctor or the professional?
There are more and more diagnostic tools happening. There was this one fascinating thing that I was reading about. Malaria is still a very, very devastating disease in a lot of parts of the world. And there's an app through your iPhone and through a lens that is placed behind the built-in camera. No internet is required. It's just the lens and this app. You prick your finger, you take a picture of it, and the information is given to you whether or not that blood, it analyzes your blood, whether you have malaria or not. Now, imagine where a doctor can't be, where you can get these statistics, where a doctor then can be, but at least there's a knowledge base that I'm needed here. I'm needed in this village. I'm needed in this village where the malaria numbers are much higher. It sounds scary. If I were a doctor, at first I would go, oh, great. I'm going to have a bunch of people who know a little bit of information and not everything, and they're going to come in and they're going to start to tell me what they have. That's one way to look at it. I'm going to become a prescription writer. But another way to look at it is I have people who have real questions to ask. who have helped me by bringing in information that I wouldn't have had, because let's face it, we don't always remember everything we have to say when we go to the doctor. We usually remember it right after we've paid and we're, halfway out. So I think it could also make for a very strong relationship because you have a partnership with your doctor.
Absolutely. It seems to me there are lots of parallels. So I live in the media world, and in the media world we've had, Twitter breaking news, and so media publications say, well, then how am I relevant? And so it reminds me of this weekend, we have the passing of Whitney Houston, we have the news broken on Twitter, and then the AP then confirms as an authority that this has happened. And in much the same way, we have doctors, our expertise, providing, their users, their patients, with that confirmation, with that expertise and knowledge.
But they also have something called the flu finder. Now, a couple of years ago, I believe it was in Japan, everybody was wearing masks, everybody in the city started to wear masks. Well, they started to use technology to go, a lot of people are tweeting that, in certain areas it seems to be a little bit heavier here, and then you start to map it out. Then you can tell people that maybe they shouldn't be going here because there seems to be a high concentration of flu there. So there are very easy ways of kind of keeping, anyone who's seen the movie Contagion.
I'm avoiding seeing that movie.
Oh my God. I don't blame you. But it's a very interesting way to kind of track health and to avoid what could be avoidable. So anything that you can imagine could happen or should happen can happen and is happening.
Fantastic. So let's switch gears a little bit. I'd love to just sort of send this over to our audience here and see if you guys have any questions. I'll give you a couple of seconds.
If not, I've got another really cool thing to talk about, but I'll wait.
Sure. Why don't you go ahead?
I think the trends for the future basically are the diagnostics that are going to be available. I think that it's about gathering information and using it. I think it's about patients having control and knowing what to do with all the information they're getting. I think it is going from gathering information to learning what that information needs and applying it. I think most things are going towards, again, there are so many things being done in, there's a $10 million grant that's been offered, I forget, like Qualcomm, I believe, and that $10 million will go towards someone who can develop either an app or a device that will be able to diagnose at least 15 disease states. So that will become another diagnostic tool. I don't think, if somebody else has another thought of what the future is going to bring, but I think right now what the future is bringing is being able to self-diagnose and then having places to go and meaningful places to give it so it means something and we can prove our health.
And I think, in a lot of ways it comes back to data and technology, being able to use the data we're compiling from technology to make better decisions, both for the consumer or the patient or the brand, or the nonprofit. One thing I was really struck by recently on a business trip was I had met with a number of nonprofits who are, historically not very tech savvy. And right now they're all focused on the tech space. They're saying, how do I use technology to better meet my goals and appeal to my, my demographic base? Organizations that are feeding the hungry in developing countries. One thing I was really struck by, I met with the World Food Program. And what they're doing now is they are working with women in developing countries to make sure that they have a digital card that they can bring to a grocery store so that they don't have to risk getting attacked carrying money to go there, which might seem really simple to most people, but to them it's world-changing, it's life-changing. And so what the World Food Program is doing is they are saying, okay, they have a card, very simple. We're going to look at the data from that card. We're going to say, this is how much more we have to invest in that region based on what's being consumed, whether it's farms or grocery stores. And we're going to take this program and build on it based on what we see. And I think that's very important.
They are also having clothing, for example, is turned into a diagnostic tool. You have sleep shirts that you wear that monitor your sleep and the quality of your sleep and all that information. Because you've got a sensor somewhere else on your body goes to doctors. They have things to wear when you're working out that you don't waste any of that information, and can also go to somebody who can make decisions from it that your pulse is too slow or you're not getting your blood pressure up that high. So again, everything is how to monitor each individual and then what to do with that information once they get it to affect the rest of the world.
Absolutely. So,
just when the data is coming in, let's say you're wearing the workout shirt, can the patient acquire the data just as well as the healthcare provider and at the same time?
I don't think I can't tell you because I can only tell you the company, which is Samanex, Samanon, that is doing the shirt. I believe the information is given to both. I think the sensor might take it to the doctor so it can be evaluated, but it's not a one-way flow. But I can't say that, yes, at the end of the day, they have all of these statistics. I don't know the specifics on that.
and of course, in the case of consumer-based products like Fitbit, it's going straight to the consumer. Hi.
I think in the area of drug development, it's really important, the diagnostic area, because personalized medicine is really going to be the future for us in terms of living not just longer, but better.
Yeah.
We won't be able to deal with the side effects on the drugs. So, I mean, that's specific to drug development, but like the whole area of personalized medicine, what that means with social media and connecting the patients with other patients like that. It's already starting in areas like defense, but I think that's exciting.
Go ahead.
There's a, it's slightly off of that, but there's a chip that's been developed, and they use it mostly during clinical trials. But it's there is a sensor somewhere on your body. The information is fed somewhere else, and to the doctor. And when you swallow this medication, the chip is digestible. So all the information, so the doctor knows that you've taken it. He knows what your body temperature is. He knows what this is. So the clinical trials that they do, because that's how it's used right now. I can only imagine how that same technology can be used in the future for making sure that people take their medication. But there are amazing things that are happening, and how the information is gotten. But a lot of those conversations, as you know, happen between not so much the companies and the people because of limitations, but it's that huge, it's the community of people that help each other that's really going to be what is driving a lot of the diagnosis and the questions. The doctor is going to be one of the circle of referrals.
Yeah, I think that this really plays into a larger trend, too, when it comes to social media, because what we've had for so long is, the social graph. I want to talk to just my friends. And then there are communities of people who want, interest-based conversations. I have something, I've been diagnosed, I want to find a group of support or information. But now so much of what we're seeing is, this move from the social graph to the interest-based graph. And we see that in everything from, we were just talking about Pinterest, to, these other niche-based communities. So I would assume that we'll see a growth in, communities for specific diagnoses, for more fitness and wellness issues.
But there are also things that, there are sneakers, or whatever, shoes, sneakers, whatever, with GPS systems in them for Alzheimer's patients. So, I mean, I don't know if anyone here knows how difficult it is when you're caring for someone and you have to care every single day, because they might leave. They might. It's happened to friends of mine where suddenly, like, where are they? There's an area that if this patient goes past the area that they know, that 5 mobile phones are alerted, so you know where they're going. So this is not so much a diagnostic, but a care for the patient and what's going on. So that's just one little way that something like GPS technology can be used. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Helayne.
Thank you. I got a little chop mark over there, so I guess we're finished. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you.
Everybody have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of Social Media Week.
Thank you.